graduated from 612, how long ago? Almost a year ago. So he's doing well. He's sticking around, and he helps around the facility a lot. And so you'll be hearing from him. And then we have Aaron, who's been at 612 for 2 months, and he's a little nervous. So he's going to be sharing as well. I like to get all stages involved. And so, again, thank you for your partnership. And then after they're done, then I'm going to share briefly. And so I'm going to let Aaron share.
Good morning, everyone. My name's Aaron Raber. I'm from Goshen, Indiana. I grew up Amish. Grew up in a loving household, got taken to church every Sunday. And as you all probably know, once you reach 16, you get to have the choice to go out in the world and experience what you want to experience. And I started heading down the wrong path right away. It started with alcohol, and before I knew it, I was over my head in drugs, and it took control of my life. And a lot of crazy things happened during that time. About 3 months ago, I was involved in a serious car accident due to drugs and alcohol, and I was almost killed that night. But through God's grace, He gave me another chance to better my life and to live for Him. And just since I've been here at 612, I've learned a lot of things. I've learned to give up myself, give up my life to the Lord, and let Him control my life. Because for so long I tried to do that on my own, and it didn't work. And the more I give Him, the more power He puts into my life, He gives to control my life. The better it goes. I have more peace, and I used to have a lot of anxiety and depression during the time that I was in drugs, and since I've turned my life over to the Lord, that I don't experience that anymore. He's taken that from me, and I live a very peaceful life now, and I want to live for the Lord. So that's about all I got.
For your first time, I thought you did real good. It's never easy standing in front of a bunch of people and telling them about all the bad things you did in life. It's hard to tell it just to one person, let alone a whole congregation. When I started giving my testimony months ago, I was really nervous when I'd come up here, and I couldn't really figure out why. And then I realized, it's not about what I did wrong. It's about what He did for me. And once I realized that, things really just started to calm down when I started standing up in front of people. But my name is Jason Dean Slayball. I'm from Napanee, Indiana. I also grew up Amish, grew up in an Amish home. Parents took me to church every Sunday, taught me about the Lord. I was a very active kid, loved anything that was outside. Didn't like school. Mom always said I couldn't remember what I did in school, but I could remember every play I did on the softball field. She said I could recite it to a T. So after I grew up and turned 16, like most Amish kids, they go out in the world, or they have that choice to. And I wanted to be a softball player. That's what I wanted to do. So I got a haircut, got a scooter, got a softball team, and I was ready to conquer the softball field. I began playing, and I remember the first night I went out, that Friday night I went out, Mom met me in the kitchen. It was just me and Mom, and she said, Jay, I want to tell you something. I was like, oh, here we go. She said, you know, Jay, you give Satan your little finger, and he'll take your hand, and I just want you to know that. 16 years old, who can tell you anything, you know? You've got everything prepared. So I went on. I began drinking. Never thought I smoked cigarettes. My older sister smoked cigarettes. I didn't think it smelled very well. Thought I'd never smoked. 6 months into being on my own, I was smoking cigarettes, and it just progressed from there. It didn't take long. I began smoking weed, and living however I wanted to. It had nothing to do with God. It was about what I wanted. At the age of 18, I was introduced to methamphetamine, and two of my friends came up to me and asked me if I wanted to smoke it. They did it last night, you know, I can too. I can walk away from it. They did. So we went out on the lake. We were fishing. We smoked. Little did I know, I just took a hit of something that was going to control about 12 years of my life. You don't realize how powerful that is. I look back at it now, and the best way to describe it, it was taking hold of Satan's hand directly. Everything that I was taught, that I knew, went right out the window. Did not care about it, nothing. I was on it for about 5 years. One of my good friends that we got it from got busted, 13 years in state penitentiary. I went to see him. I was the only one that would ever go see him. But me and one of my friends, we decided we're going to clean up. We're going to quit doing this. Made that decision based on fear, not because I wanted to change my life. It was based on fear of going to prison. And you would think that's enough, but it's not. If you want to change your life because you're afraid, then you better be afraid of the Lord and where that life is going to lead you. So I was clean for about 2 years, joined the Amish church, wasn't at peace, was not at peace, still wasn't at peace. I thought I would be, but I still did not commit my life to the Lord, even though I was going through the motions. After a while, I left the Amish church and began drinking again, playing softball, doing exactly what I was doing. And now that I had left church, I felt like I had a target on my back. I felt like everybody didn't want me around because I left the Amish church. So it didn't take long. I ran into some old friends, and before I knew it, I was smoking methamphetamine again. And it didn't take long after that. Being in the community I was in, I felt everybody had something against me. I quit my job. Well, with no job, you can't provide for your house. You can't pay your payments, stuff like that. So I began making it. Thought this was the way that I'm going to provide for myself. So I began making methamphetamine, selling it. Before long, the drugs started messing with my mind enough that I was too worried about going to jail that I didn't want to make it anymore. I was just going to use it. And just progressed from there. Before long, I was homeless, living from house to house. Anybody that would give me a couch to sleep on, that's where I'd sleep for as long as they'd let me. I knew something had to change, and I didn't want to go back home and face Mom. Absolutely not. Like, how am I going to walk in there? They probably don't even want me at home, you know. So we just kept on going. Figured, well, if we take this as far as it'll go, maybe I'll get to the end of myself. Then I was introduced to a needle, and that did bring me to the end of myself. It was a road I would never wish it upon anybody. I gave both hands to Satan that day. I began stealing from anybody that had anything worth stealing. When I made the decision, actually I didn't really make the decision. I knew something had to change, and I remember the day I got on my knees and I told God, you know, if there's a way that you can forgive me, my life needs to change. I do not want to live like this anymore. And when I did pray that day, things began to happen. It seemed every day that I went through life, something always pointed me back to Napanee, Indiana. I didn't have any friends outside of Napanee that would let me stay or had any places to go. So it ended up pushing me back to Napanee. And the day I decided to go get help, I actually was about a quarter mile from my parents' house at a hotel. And I remember sitting on the bed that morning and something told me, if you don't change today, when will you? And I got up off that bed and told him I got to go home. I had my friend take me home. I walked into that same kitchen, that exact same kitchen, 16 years to the day. And I had to tell Mom, he doesn't have my little finger anymore. He's got everything. Wasn't a fun day, but it was a day I look back on, and I've had nothing but peace since then. Nothing but peace. I got to Operation 612, and on the way out, even though you want change, it takes a while before you actually give yourself up and accept the fact that this, the unknown, you don't know. You're around a bunch of people you don't know, in a community you don't know. So coming out here, I thought I'd give it 3 days and then I'm going to go back home. It's just 7 months is too long, So coming out here, I came out on a Saturday night. Sunday we went to church, and Bud Lytle from Chillicothe, Ohio, was preaching that day, and he had my attention the whole sermon. And he said, we can go through life. At the end of his sermon, he said, we can go through life and we can believe this book, and if it's not true, what do we lose? We lose our lives. We're going to lose them anyway. But if we go through life and we don't believe this book and it is true, what do we lose? All eternity. And for some odd reason that day, it hit me like a Mack truck. I mean, it hit me. And I remember looking up at the roof in the barn, and I said, God, today is the day I surrender. And from that day forward, it was easy. It was easy. It was peace. It was fun. It was fun going through the program, the people I got to know, the relationships I've made, the restoration God has done in my life is no words, no words. I remember one of the biggest concerns I had that first week was, I wonder how Mom and Dad are doing. I remembered all those years of them having to go to bed, not knowing where I'm at, not knowing if I'm alive. I mean, there was a point at one time that it was 2 years that they didn't talk to me. So I wrote a letter, and I told them, you probably don't know if I'm going to stay here or how I'm doing, but I'm doing fine. I've made the decision I'm going to stay here and let God lead my life. And I got a letter almost every day after that. Now they're so supportive. So supportive. Even though I left the Amish church, even though their wish for me would not to be, my dad told me last time he came out this spring, he said, Jay, if you don't come back to the Amish, I'm okay with that. I see more peace in you than I ever have in your life, and that's what I need. That's what I want for you. He said the way you're living your life is the way we want it. And it brought peace to me. It brought so much peace to me. So after graduating, I thought I'd leave the program and try to give back to the guys in the program as much as I can, try to inspire them, try to help them along. And I feel kind of guilty at times because they inspire me more than I feel like I inspire them. And God has given me so much, so much. He's given me a job at Walnut Creek Planing, and those people there, the way they surround themselves to the Operation 612, to the men in the program, the way they help them along, they have no idea how much that does for those men, how much it does for me, how much it's done for me. And just the whole community, being here, how much it does for us, seeing the love for another human being. It helps them along. And I want to thank everybody here for inviting us, for sharing with us. just spending the day with us. It really means a lot. I want to thank the people that come out to Operation 612 during the week to share, to do Bible studies. Again, they just have no idea how much that means to the men there and how much they enjoy that. As for now, that's all I have, and I want to thank everybody for giving me this time.
All right, so as I was praying about what to share, I was going to share a message, but I felt like the Lord wanted me to share about part of my journey, and it's not the part where I struggled with addiction. I want to talk about a different stage in my life, and with you guys partnering with us at that Fresno property, we're looking at moving Operation 612, the core of it, to Fresno, and using the facility where we are now for our aftercare program. And we can house far more people down there. And so I'm looking forward to that opportunity, but there's something else that is really exciting us. And it's going into the field of mental illness, depression, anxiety, schizophrenia, that sort of thing. We see a massive need in the community and with people. Primarily, we start seeing this with addiction with, they call it dual diagnosis, which is whatever, but they call it dual diagnosis, meaning addiction plus mental illness. But you cannot have addiction without mental illness. It's impossible, or what they call mental illness. And so we're already in that field, and we already have plenty of experience in understanding exactly what it takes. And so we are excited about Fresno for introducing that facet into our organization as well. And so I want to share about my journey with depression. So I believe it was about 4 years ago. One day, as I was sitting at a restaurant meeting with someone, something hit me out of nowhere. I don't know what it was. I don't know how to explain it, but it felt like something hit me in the head, and it dropped me. And after that, instantly, depression just flooded my life in a very extreme fashion. I was laid up in bed for days at a time, spent many hours in the fetal position crying. I had no idea what was wrong. I had no idea what was happening to me. I just knew it was bad, and yet I knew the Creator. I knew Christ, the one that delivered me from addiction, was still God. And so I hung on to Him. And as hard and as confusing as that time was, I refused to go get help from a doctor. And I know a lot of people would say, you should have gone and gotten help from a doctor. Yet the reason I didn't is because I saw so many of our men coming into our program who were on medications for depression, and it never healed them. It never helped them. And so I was determined to see this out with Christ and to see where He was going to take it. And I made it. I made this resolution. I was going to see this through with Christ or die. I was willing to go there because I didn't want to be numb for the rest of my life on medication. I'm glad I made that decision. As I said, I spent many hours just crying in the fetal position. And if anybody here has ever dealt with depression, you know exactly what I'm talking about. A deep despair, a pit, a hole, death that you stare in the face, and there is no hope. If you can take yourself to a place where you have absolutely no hope, and death is imminent, and yet you fight tooth and nail so that it will not kill you. And in that time, the only thing that would help me was my wife would pray for me. And then I would start crying and I would feel better. And as time went on, the depression was extremely heavy at first. And then it went to once a week. Then it went to once every 2 weeks. And then it went to once a month. And then it went to once every couple of months. And it slowly went away. I slowly made progress moving away from it. And then a few years into that, I went to a place that is a holistic healing center. And I went there to learn more about what they do so I could bring that back to Operation 612 and maybe help our guys more. But when I got there, they started running tests on me and realized I was actually quite sick. And I had very underactive thyroid. My liver numbers were off the charts. My cholesterol was extremely high. I was pre-diabetic, and my whole body was just attacking itself, and I was very sick and didn't even know it. And so I start this journey with a natural doctor to walk out of that. And as I continue to walk, I make progress and make progress. But one day I meet this guy. He's a Schwarzentrooper gentleman from Missouri. And so I went and saw him because I heard he knew a lot about depression and he knew a lot about physical health and so on. And so I went to see him, and I was going to learn and see if he knew anything about my situation. And so he starts drawing the line between my physical health and my mental health. And he helped me understand that all of my physical ailments were related to my depression. Okay? And that they were inextricably connected. Now, he draws the connection between your liver health to your mind. And so, as he's explaining all of this, I'm just intrigued, and all of this is coming together, and I'm realizing that all of my sickness was based on my depression. Now, while I was there, he shared a few stories because he's also a mule trainer. And he trains mules for a living, and this is what he does. And so he's a really a renowned mule trainer. He does high dollar mules. He's sold mules over $40,000, and he just does really well with them. And when I came to his farm, I seen that he has what seemed to be miles of fence made out of these giant oil pipes that he had, and this is where he kept all of his mules. And so I asked him the question, how do you train mules? And he said, I'm not, this is not the normal way of training them, but I kind of stumbled onto this. He said one day, he had this mule, and the thing would not listen no matter what he did. He couldn't get the thing tamed down and he was getting to the point where he was ready to release the mule and just say it's a lost cause, we can't do it. And on that last day when he was ready to give up on this mule, he's going past this blue tarp, and the tarp terrifies the mule, and he tries to run away, and he has a thought. So he takes the blue tarp and he ties it to the back of the mule. And you can about imagine what happened after that. The mule took off at an extremely high speed, and when it got to the fence, instead of trying to leap over it, instead of stopping or turning, it bounded into the fence as if though it was going to break through the fence. And like I said, it was lead pipe fence. This mule hit the fence and right back down and just dropped to the ground. And the mule slowly gets up, looks at the blue tarp, and realized it's not that big of a deal. So he said, well, that worked. I'm going to try it on another mule. So they tie one on to the next mule. They let him loose out in the field, and the mule starts running, but not fast like the first one, but just starts running away from the tarp. Well, of course, wherever he goes, the tarp follows him. So he's running and he's running and he's running, and he at 5 o'clock in the evening, he said, well, it's dinner time. I'm going to go eat some dinner, and this mule was still running. He comes back out. The mule was still running. So finally, it's bedtime, and he said, well, if I take that tarp off, that will be a ruined mule. So he left the tarp on, and he said during the night, he kept on waking up, and he'd hear this mule still running. And by the next day, it was still running when he got up in the morning. He said it would stop every now and then because it would forget what it's running from to eat some grass. And then it would look back, see the tarp, and start running again. 5 days later, the mule stopped running. 5 days later, it finally stopped running. But this is what I'm talking about. Whether it be addiction, depression, anxiety, no matter what it is, it's all a blue tarp. It's all a blue tarp. We're all running from something. We all have something that drives us, that pushes us, that causes us to run. And when these things come into our life, we become fearful and we run. And that's what addiction is facing that fear and realizing it's not as big as what you thought it was. It's not the big problem you thought it was, and you can walk through it. And so in my depression, I realized later, after I met this couple who's a missionary couple from South Africa who came over, they helped me put this all together. He's an herbalist and she's a psychologist. And so they helped me understand why I am depressed. People kept on saying you have too much stress. You have too much stress. And I say, I don't have that much stress. You know, we got a good crew at 612. We got good guys at 612. I don't have that much stress that I should be depressed. There's something more going on. And so she explained to me. She said, in your past, before you met Christ, there was a lot of anger in your life, a lot of resentment, a lot of things that you rather wouldn't go visit, a lot of things that you don't want to deal with. And then while I'm visiting them, I go into a very deep state of depression. And this was all God's hand. I try to walk it off. I try to push people away. I try to make sure nobody can get to me. I'm just fighting it. I'm fighting it. And she pulls me to the side. Finally, she wants to talk to me. And finally, I'm like, okay, I'll talk. So as we start talking, she asks, what am I feeling? I say, I feel like I'm going to die. Literally, I feel like I'm going to die. And she said, what's wrong with that? That statement changed me. It changed my view on depression completely. She said, what's wrong with dying? She said, go ahead, let it kill you. Just let it do it. I said, I can't do that. She said, no, let it do it. And she continues to ask me questions. And then all of a sudden, anger from when I was a child starts coming out. And it starts just coming out. And I just let it happen, and I let this depression just overtake me. I haven't had depression since. I'm not saying I'm never going to get it again. But what I realized in it was that depression is there for my good. It's old things that have to come out. There's things in my life that need to be removed, and depression is the body's way of removing it. Depression is the body's way of dealing with that blue tarp, getting it out. The things that made me angry when I was a child, I cannot remember. I can't remember those things, but I can cry my way through them. And what she said is, the feelings that you refused to feel when you were a child are now demanding to be felt. And that is what depression is. And that is what addiction is. It's running from those feelings. It's removing yourself emotionally from all feelings so that you are in control of feelings, and so feelings cannot control you. But when depression happens, the feeling is going to control you, and that's the problem. And that's why we run for medication, and that's why we run to numb it, and that's why we never overcome it while under medication. I'm not here saying medication is bad. Please do not take that home and take that statement. What I'm saying is, for those who are willing, the Lord is able. For those who are ready, the Lord is able. He did it in my life. And he can do it in people's lives, but do it with a professional. Don't do it by yourself. But what I'm saying is, the depression is the body's way of dealing with the problem. Let it come out. Let it kill you. And when it overtakes you, you will realize that that blue tarp is really not as bad as you thought it was. And all that time that I am battling with depression, the biggest issue is I'm fighting back. The biggest issue is I'm fighting back. We're told all our lives, suppress your feelings, suppress them, stop crying, stop being weak, stop being immature. We're told this our whole lives, and I gave myself a short-term memory loss. I created that in my own life. There were feelings I didn't want to feel, so I chose to forget what happened. And I pushed those feelings down, and I pushed them down, and I pushed them down. And as I continued to push them down, one day they demanded to come to the surface. One day they had to come forward, and I had to feel them all at once. It is very important that we process, that we grieve, that we properly deal with bad relationships. It is extremely important, because mental illness with anxiety and depression and schizophrenia, all these things come out of an unhealthy place. And we are excited to get into that field. Very excited. So with my physical ailments came these attacks that I would continue to have. Every now and then I would just get an attack and it would drop me to my knees, and I thought it was my gallbladder. So I went and got it checked out, and the doctor said, "You don't have any gallbladder issues. It's definitely not that." And so I said, "Well, what is it, doc?" And he said, "Well, you need to stop eating angry." And I said, "Well, I don't know what that means. I'm very happy when I eat, actually." He said, you have emotional issues that need to come out. He had no idea that I had depression. He had no idea that I had any of those issues. And God just reconfirmed that needs to happen, that process needs to happen. And as I continued talking to my friend, she said, "Let the physical pain overtake you." And I said, "I've never heard that. I've never heard that." And so I did. And I realized, too, most of my pain comes from fighting. And I want to leave with you today, most of your pain comes from fighting it, not surrendering it, not giving it to God, not letting Him having it, trusting Him the entire way through, because He has a plan through your pain. He has a plan through what you're going through a wayward child. He has a plan through it. He has a plan when you lose a loved one. He has a plan when things don't go your way. There's a plan in all of it. You know, He might not be the God that starts every storm, but He's the God of every storm. He is in control. He has this. And if physical pain is what comes, let it. And if emotional pain is what comes, let it. Let the Lord do what He wants in your life. And when you do, you'll be amazed at how He brings it all together. And so, I want to motivate you guys to understand there's so many people that are broken and need help, including all of us. If you're not broken, you wouldn't be at church. We're all in need of a Savior. There's people who just need that guidance, who just need that push that Operation 612 can give them, that we offer to them. And you guys are doing a mighty work in partnering with us. I get to live the testimonies every day. I get to speak to our men and women. We just left our women's program this morning at 4:30 to get here in Michigan. And, I get to hear testimonies and stories of what's going on in all of our programs. And I just want you guys to know you're making an unbelievable difference in many people's lives. There's true freedom in Christ. And that's what you are offering to people when you partner with us, is that freedom in Christ. And so, in Psalms 34:17, he says, when the righteous cry for help, the Lord hears and delivers them out of their troubles. And the Lord is near to the brokenhearted and saves the crushed in spirit. He's near to the brokenhearted. And he saves the crushed in spirit. I tell my men all the time, we're the lucky ones. We're the blessed ones. If God lives near the broken ones, thank God we're broken. If God is near the crushed in spirit, thank God that we're going through something. If I would have never gone through any struggles in my life, would I need Jesus? No. So I say thank God for our struggle. Thank God that we have suffered. Thank God that He is the God of every storm. And so that's what you guys are partnering with, is a team that can walk alongside broken people, that loves broken people. And we're really excited about what you guys are bringing to the table. I think we're going to open up for questions if anybody does have any questions. I guess. Is that okay, Joe? Yeah? Does anyone have any questions? Yeah. Yes. So our men's program is 7 months. Our women's program is 8 months. At our women's facility, we take women along with their children, and so it's a little bit longer for that reason. Oftentimes, human sex trafficking is involved with women in addiction, and so it also gives them a safe place to get away from the people that might have been harboring them.
What is the criteria for somebody to sign up?
Well, you have to be broken beyond repair. No, the criteria to sign up is basically, if you want help, you can get in. There's really no, no specific criteria as far as that goes. Yeah. I mean, we do vet people and make sure that they're going to be safe for our program and make sure they're not violent or anything like that. So, mm-hmm.
Talk about the facility in Fresno, kind of how you got it, and what the plans are with that.
Yeah, so a local business owner donated the Fresno property. It's 13 and a half acres, and it's in just an absolutely beautiful land in the middle of Fresno area, overlooking a big valley. And it has, I believe, 11 buildings on it, and we're going to start renovating the first one, and as soon as that one's done, we will move our facility from Sugar Creek there, and then start on the second building, then the third, then the fourth. Now, we're not going to house people in all 11 buildings. Some of them are workshops. Some of them are, we got a big hoop building that we want to turn into a recreational place for volleyball during the winter, for music events and stuff like that. And yeah, so as we start filling that place up, like I said, our dream is to get people who are struggling with mental health as well. as addiction, because again, we're all broken. And so, yeah, that's kind of the plan there. I think we'll be able to, it looks like we'll be able to house 50 to 80 people there. So it's going to be, it's going to definitely create a lot of opportunity for help. So. Anyone else? Yeah, so Walnut Creek Planing is a very, very unbelievable opportunity that they gave us to have our guys work there. And so our guys work there every other week. They trade off, so we have 16 men, and they gave us 7 positions. And so they rotate, and that's how they pay for their stay. I said early on when we started the ministry, we can't charge people for coming in because the real broken ones that actually want help are all broke. So, so that's kind of the idea behind that. If you still got money left over, you're probably not done. And so I know that was the case in my life. And so Walnut Creek lets us work there, and then it's a good partnership. They've given us a really good opportunity, and the best thing one of the best things that happened when we moved there was the culture in that place is unbelievable. I don't know if anybody works there, but just a clean environment for the guys to work in, and the bosses really do care about our guys, and so that's been a great partnership. Anyone else? We started about, I think, like 5.5 years ago. Mm-hmm. Yep. Yep. Yeah. Well, I guess, we'll be around for lunch. If you guys have more questions, you can talk to David or I or Joe or whoever you want to, and we can answer questions as much as we'll try to, as much as we can. So I guess if you want to close, that'd be great.
I know, David, you met with us. Did you want to say a few words, David, this morning? I know David can talk. I don't know how many of you know. I did find that out the other night, so we might not close right. But I just wanted to. David came, and I just felt his heart that evening, and it's kind of what tied us in. And I know he talks to a lot of community people. Maybe you just have a word or two for everybody here.
I don't have a lot to add. It pretty well got hit. I'm really excited to partner with you guys. I know that we were talking in the meeting about the excitement that we can lay down denominations, and I think once we do that, we can get focused on what we really want to do is save souls. And so I'm really excited about you guys partnering with us, and this group of guys, I think, has a big passion to give us some ammunition to make that happen. So I just want to thank you for having us here, and God bless you guys as a church and individually.
Thanks, David.
Yeah.
I guess to you men at Operation 612, I just want to say, to come here and let people talk about being at the bottom and being broken takes a lot of courage. And I want to commend you this morning for doing that and for sharing with us. And I just want to give you a scripture to go with this morning. There's a woman in the Bible that showed what faith is, that has spoken to me many, many times. I just want to read that scripture for you. In Matthew chapter 9, verse 20, and says, "Behold, a woman was diseased with an issue of blood 12 years, came behind him and touched him, the hem of his garment. For she said within herself, If I may but touch his garment, I shall be whole. But Jesus turned him about, and when he saw her, he said, Daughter, be of good comfort, thy faith has made thee whole. And the woman was made whole from that hour." You know, sometimes we don't have enough left but to touch the hem of the garment of Christ. And he honors that. He sees the one down the lowest reaching for but the hem of the garment. And that scripture has changed my life. That reality, that in that little touch, that little reach, where we think it's not enough, that God is there and that he is faithful, and Christ longs to touch each one of us like that. So again, thank you for coming. I was touched, and I'm blessed, by your willingness and humility to seek out the Lord. He does want to heal. And I'm excited about the fact of working with depression and anxiety. There's a lot of that in our world today. We're very fearful. We face a lot of things in our lives, and we face a lot of challenges. But God has a plan, and I like the fact that you encourage us. We need to take those steps with help that's professional, people that can help us with it.